Hey guys, it's Kyle. This is gonna be a video that's going over gRPC microservices as a pipeline. A microservice, as a summary, is when you split your application into small independent services that will do each will do one thing and talk to each other over the network instead of everything living on one big code base. And this is going to be a walkthrough of a demo that I built in Python. And as to help you out, there's two versions of every route, one that uses gRPC and one that doesn't. So you can compare them side by side and see what gRPC actually gives you. Now, to get started, you're going to want Python 3.13 plus UV and a 12 data API key. Now, you're going to want to clone the repo, where you can either use the GitHub CLI, where you can clone this in a new terminal, or if you already have the repository, you'll just check out into your branch. Now, you'll see that I have made branches for each of you: Joshua, Lucas, Nitin, and Sean. Don't use the gRPC one, that's my reference branch. Now, you're going to want to copy the env example, so you're going to do cp dot env example, and then .env. This is going to copy it into where we're going to be able to run the code, and it's going to load the environment variable. To get your API key, you're going to want to sign up to 12data.com. Once you're signed in, you can reveal this and paste it into your actual .env, not the example. Now, once you have that done, you can do UV sync, and it's going to install dependencies. Now, once you do that, you're going to want to generate the gRPC Python code from the proto files, which are basically the services that I have pre-made. So if you go to the proto, they're basically the files where I define some comments explaining what each of these methods will do, what messages are the example of an empty mess of request and a response. Now you're going to do uv run python gen underscore proto dot py. It's going to generate. It's probably going to log a lot more. I've already had it generated. I'm going to clear my terminal again. I'm going to make my terminal a little bit larger, just so if anybody needs to see it. Now, I have one command that can start it. Now, if you do want to start them individually, you can, well, if you want to basically see it for a specific service log in your editor, you can basically spawn a new terminal, for example, where for this, you're going to need 3 terminals because you're going to run one for the market data. So you would basically do uv run python services slash market underscore data.py. And this is basically finding this server right here. And it's going to start it. That's one of them. And then in another one, you're going to need services slash transformer.py. And then lastly, you're going to need to run our UVcorn main API. So you're going to do uv run UVcorn API.main colon app dash 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 reload. And that's going to make it hot reloadable. In this case, I've made a script where it will just run everything at once, and it'll try to kill all of this, any stale processes that might be already running. I'm going to start this up, and you'll see actually logs that it's starting the transformer running on this port, the market data running on this port. It'll log that all of them are running, and the gateway that's here, you can do Control C to stop it, and it has the logging here for the actual main API. Now, each route exists twice, one with gRPC, one without. By what I mean by that is that if you open the API folder, you'll see that there's a routers folder, there's a gRPC folder, and then there's a no gRPC. The no gRPC means that it's not using any of the microservices, and it's just a router that hits an endpoint and just does as simple as possible for both of the examples for 12 data and just a regular API method. Now, it's the same output, but it's a different architecture. The no gRPC routes only need the gateway running. The gRPC routes need all 3 terminals running to work properly. Now, with gRPC, we are going to start hitting some API requests. So we're going to actually try gRPC first. I'm going to close this. I'm going to make it in Postman. I'm going to do a post request. We're going to go to http://localhost 8000 API gRPC hello. This is the first request we're going to do. You're going to click send, and you're going to see it returns hello world. And this is using gRPC, and you'll see there's no logging because I'm running everything all at once. You're not going to see all the logging here. Now, this is one of the main methods, which just runs through the market data in this case. And then we can basically add a slash, and we can hit the market data and the transformer. Or I can do hello Kyle in this case, and it's going to transform world into Kyle. Now you can put whatever you want. Maybe you want to put your name Joshua. Maybe you want to put Nitin in this field, and then you're going to click send. Now, that's just a few of the examples. Now, we're going to try to do the quote, which is going to do the grabbing the market data and transforming it. So I'm going to delete the hello. I'm going to do slash quote, well, just quote, slash AAPL for Apple. I'm going to click send. Now, you'll see that I actually show you two examples. I'm going to show you the raw, basically what it gave right here. In this case, from the specific endpoint I'm calling, such as the symbol, the price, what's open at, and the volume, and then the transformation, which was the symbol, the price, the change, and the change percentage. Now, you can try this again, where I can just click this again. It's going to send the request, hit the API again. I could try another brand, for example, Tesla, and it'll do the same thing. Now, we can do this without gRPC by deleting everything after the slash API. To do with the no gRPC, you're going to do no dash gRPC hello as an example, which is just going to do a regular API. You can do the same thing like before, Kyle, Joshua, where it's just going to replace it. And now we're going to do the quote. So I'm going to do slash quote, and I'm going to do Apple again. And you see it returns the same data. Now, I'm going to basically compare and show you guys the code in this case. Now, one of the things you might be saying, what is gRPC again? Well, it's mainly RPC, which is remote procedure call. Now, how this works in this case, I'll show you two examples. Now, one of the things I would pretty much just go over is that the fact that there is multiple versions that how browsers work in this case. Now, what does this actually mean? Now, what this means is that HTTP 1.1 sends one request at a time per connection. So if we need 10 things, you're waiting in line. Now, what I mean is that if I need this JS file, the CSS file, the image PNG, this means I have to hit the server 3 times from my browser to request those individual files to the server. Now, this means is what happens if there's 5 people. This basically means that you basically have to wait in line until this one person's done for all these separate requests. Now, HTTP2 is called where it's multiplexing. What this means is where multiple requests over a single connection in parallel, and it will send data in binary frames instead of plain text. That's what makes gRPC fast for service-to-service calls, because when you're firing off many small requests, you're basically doing it over the network, and it's really quick. Now, that's just a example. Now, I'm going to now show you the differences between why gRPC might actually show more code. So we're actually going to look at the hello route. Now, you'll see that this hello name, it's only really 2 lines in this case, where I have a string and I'm replacing the name world with whatever I'm doing for dynamically for the parameter as name, and then I'm just returning it as JSON. Now, you'll see that if I open up the gRPC and open up hello, you'll see that it does the same thing, but it needs 2 service calls. Now, you may say, more code for the same result, so why would we bother? Well, in a small demo, I really wouldn't, but in a real system where we might have dozens of services and teams, gRPC basically gives you a strict contract, I would say. What by contract, I basically mean these proto files where we define exactly what data goes in and out, where we don't have to guess what data we're basically sending between requests. And this is basically using HTTP2 which is binary. So it's sending binary information because how we define these protofiles are basically binary for each of these. Like this is string, this is one binary for here. This is another binary, another one, another one, and then here's another request where there's no fields that are needed to make this request, but we're still returning a message in this case. Now, this is just one of the things. Now, it's independent services. Now, market data could be rewritten, redeployed, or scaled without touching another server. Now, different teams can basically own different services where I can make someone focus specifically doing on maybe market data, someone focusing on transforming. And the big thing is obviously binary over the wire, where protobuf is smaller and faster to serialize than JSON, and at scale, where you're basically building companies where you need to do as many requests as possible, this matters. Now, where earlier, where I was basically generating code for Gen Proto, now what this basically does is that you define the contract in the proto file, and the client and server boilerplate is auto-generated where we don't have to actually handwrite something called a HTTP client. So I have this client right here, which uses our generated code, and it's basically saying I want to start